Now let's look at how a monopolist makes the choice of how much output to produce. A monopolist has a different decision than a perfectly competitive firm. Remember, the perfectly competitive firm was a price taker, so its marginal revenue was equal to whatever the market price is. For a monopolist, it's a little more complicated. A monopolist has market power because the monopolist is the only firm producing in that market. So it faces the market demand curve. A monopolist isn't a price taker. A monopolist has to look at this demand curve when making its choices. So marginal revenue is different than for a perfectly competitive firm. Let's see how marginal revenue is related to the demand curve. Suppose the monopolist is producing at point A, meaning it can sell 1 unit of its output at a price of $14. If the monopolist wants to sell more, if the monopolist decides to produce 2 instead of 1, it can do that, but it has to lower its price down to $12. So there's 2 things that happen when a monopolist increases its production. In order to be able to do so, it needs to lower its price because the demand curve in the market is downward sloping. So to sell additional units, the firm must cut its price. So there's good news and bad news about producing more. If you produce and sell more units of your product, you'll be getting more revenue because you'll sell additional units of your product. However, you will be selling all of the previous units at a lower price. For example, suppose you are producing at point C at a price of $10 and producing 3 units. You're getting $10 for each of those 3 units that you're producing. If you decide to move to point D, you're now producing 4 units, so you're selling 4 instead of 3. But those first 3 that you were selling now sell at $8 instead of $10. So marginal revenue, the additional revenue you get from selling another unit, is always less than the price of that last unit. You get the price for the last unit that you sell it at. Here at point D, you get $8 for your 4th unit, but you have to reduce the price of all of the units that you were selling before. So when we look at a monopolist, the monopolist faces a demand curve, and the marginal revenue associated with that demand curve is always below the market demand curve. Something interesting, we know that in the elastic portion of the demand curve, which is the upper portion of the demand curve, marginal revenue is going to be positive, because if we lower price a little bit, quantity is going to go up a lot. That's what we mean by elastic. In the inelastic portion of the demand curve, marginal revenue is going to be negative, because the percentage change in quantity is less than the percentage change in price. And since we're reducing price, our total revenue is going to go down. Marginal revenue is negative. So here's the formula for marginal revenue. Marginal revenue for a monopolist is equal to the new price. And so marginal revenue, if we're increasing output by 1 unit, it's the new price that you have to charge that you get for that additional unit that you're selling, plus the slope of the demand curve times the old quantity. So however many you were selling before times the slope of the demand curve, which is negative. The first part of the formula is the good news. It's how much more money you receive from selling an additional unit. The second part is the bad news. It's how much revenue you lose because you had to reduce the price on all previously sold quantities. Now, how does a monopolist use this information to make a choice about output? Let's look at a monopolist decision. Here's the monopolist demand curve, the market demand curve the monopolist faces. Here's the marginal revenue curve associated with that. Now, we're going to use the marginal principle just like any other firm. Marginal principle says, produce the amount of quantity where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. And we can see that's at point A, producing 900 doses of a drug per hour. So in this market, we're looking at pharmaceuticals and how much pharmaceuticals this monopolist is going to produce. So the first choice they make is how much to produce, which is going to be 900 doses of a drug per hour. That's the profit maximizing level of output. The next choice is what price to charge. Now, a monopolist is going to charge as much as it possibly can, as much as the market will bear. So we can take that quantity of 900 and know that the market demand curve tells us the market's willingness to pay for any quantity that's produced. So we go up from 900 up to the demand curve at point B, and we can see that we can charge $15 per dose. So the monopolist is going to first choose its quantity, 900, then find its price by going up to the demand curve, and that's going to be 15. Finally, we can compute what their profits will be by looking at what the average costs are for this monopolist. And when producing 900 doses per hour, we can see that costs are $8 per dose. So profits are going to be this green rectangle. That's the difference between the price that it's selling at and average cost times quantity. It's the area of this green triangle.